Hey, thanks for tuning into the Long Grey Lesson Show. It's a podcast that motivates and inspires leaders to pursue their passions and to leave a positive impact in their communities.
Simratpal Singh, who also goes by Simmer, was born and raised on a farm in Punjab, a state in the northwestern part of India. At the age of 9, he and his family immigrated to the United States, initially to the Bay Area in California, and then eventually relocated to Kent, Washington for his remaining years of middle school and high school. At the time of his enrollment to West Point in 2006, when Sikhs were not allowed to practice their religion by wearing their articles of faith in the US military, he made the devastating decision to remove his turban and have his hair and beard shaved. In the face of adversity, he resolved to one day restore his articles of faith and his identity once again. Simmer graduated and commissioned as an engineer with honors from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point in 2010. Upon graduation, he rose through the ranks, earning his Ranger tab in 2012 and deployed to Kandahar province in Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom. As a route clearance platoon leader, he led a team that cleared IEDs and ultimately received a Bronze Star Medal. In 2015, Simmer attended a Vaisakhi celebration at the Pentagon, where he met a few other observant Sikh service members who had successfully integrated into the U.S. Army with their articles of faith. After nearly a decade, Simmer began pursuing a path once again to regain his articles of faith.
Welcome back to yet again another episode of Long Grey Lessons. My name is Tom Lay, and I am your host for today. I am super excited and really honored to be able to welcome our guests on the show. Today, we have Major Simratpal Singh, who also goes by Simmer. He is a 2010 West Point graduate. He's an engineer by trade and is currently serving at the United States Military Academy as an economics instructor. Welcome, Simmer.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. Considering some of the other heavy hitters you've had here, this is an absolute honor to be here and to share my story. And it's kind of cool that your pronunciation of my first name was pretty spot on.
Really?
Yeah.
So this has been 3 years in the making. I remember reaching out to you on Facebook, actually.
Yep.
After I saw the CNN Great Big Story feature that they did on you. And I was incredibly inspired and taken back when I heard about your story, because what you did and what you represent has really shaped the military moving forward. And that's something that we can certainly dive deeper into this interview. But before we go there, let's rewind the clock back and start from the beginning. So, would you mind sharing with us your childhood experience and what it was like growing up in Kent, Washington?
Yeah, I'll go even farther back.
Okay, yeah.
So I was actually born in Punjab, which is in northern India, or at least part of it is northern India, and moved over to the States when I was 9 years old. Up until the age of 9, I was lived on a farm, and so part of a farming family, and then my father immigrated here 2-3 years before, and then we came to San Jose, California, so Bay Area, and did my middle school years there, and then moved up to Seattle, Washington, or Kent, Washington area in 2001, actually, when I was in 8th grade.
Did you have any family here prior to you moving?
Yeah, so most of my mom's side was either in the U.S. or Canada. Most of my dad's side and is still in Punjab.
Okay. And growing up, were your parents pretty strict on you at all? What was kind of like parenthood like?
Yeah, I think they were. I would say they were very much supportive in most of my endeavors. But as far as strict, like, hey, if you do something wrong, we're gonna put you in your place. Yeah, definitely, right? Like, definitely got some whoopings in the rear end. So that was, that was part of growing up in Punjab, right? And so, heck, over there, teachers used to do discipline.
Yeah, that's right.
But as far as my parents have always been absolutely supportive of anything that I wanted to try, anything that I wanted to do to the best of their ability. Right. The reality is that they were immigrants in a new country, and so they did the best they could with their knowledge.
And then, as a young child, were you studious?
Doing well in whatever I tried was important. Even here in the U.S., the schooling system isn't as competitive as it is in Punjab, where like they start rack and stacking you, ranking you from like first grade, like where you stand, right? And so that was definitely something that I grew up with. And so, interesting enough, coming to West Point and having that rack and stack system wasn't new to me. I was used to it up until fourth grade. Um, Actually, when I came over to the states in fourth grade, I remember learning that you get Saturdays and Sundays off. Over there, you only had Sundays off, and you get 3 months of summer vacation. I was like, man, this is the best thing ever. And so that was neat, the transition. But I
Hmm.
did notice, the education was a lot more focused on deeper learning than rote memorization. That was the biggest change that I noticed. Educational change coming over here to the states.
How about in school? What were your interests? And then what did you want to be when you're older?
Yeah. Um, I think I always wanted to be an engineer. I think that was something that was always in my mind. Um, Generally, so my dad was a math and science teacher. I don't know if I picked it up from him, but generally, math and science was something that always interested me. And naturally, so I was better at it. I was better at it than in some of the other subjects. Um, And then, even here at the academy, I remember thoroughly enjoying, the one course that we take, international relations course that we take, thoroughly enjoying it. But I know that I wasn't as good at it as some of my double E classes. So
And then going further into high school, participated in sports and was very invested into different extracurriculars. How did you come across West Point?
yeah, so it's interesting. I again, being from an immigrant family, I did know that the value of any of the extracurricular stuff for college, right? Like it was all I chased after that stuff because I was interested in it, and I think it was only until probably my junior year of high school I started learning, hey, this stuff has value after high school. And I had the good fortune of going to a high school that was mixed demographics in that you had people from all different societies, right? You had folks that were very well off and folks that were not very well off, and so I was introduced to different perspectives. Just out, actually near Seattle International Airport. And so then I was involved in student government, class president, that kind of stuff. Did for sports, did soccer, wrestling, a little bit of cross country, and then created my own global perspectives club because I loved international politics, loved to keep myself informed, and so at the time we would talk about what was happening in the world, and I remember Iraq War was fresh, and so I remember discussing that in Global Perspectives Club.
Wow. And ultimately, with that wide breadth of experience, um, did you read in like the books, or was there someone that kind of guided you to how you eventually learned about West Point?
Yeah, you know, um, I think military service was something that was always an interest of mine, um, and in the back of my mind, I knew that I wanted to serve, but I didn't know what that looked like. Again, lack of information, right? I remember in eighth grade, briefly mentioning it to my math teacher, and him mentioning something about, hey, make sure you get a college education first. So that further developed my perspective that, hey, I want to get a college education, but I want to serve. Um, And I just, look, fortunate enough to have someone a year ahead of me who got into the academy, to West Point, Matt Norman. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. He kind of told me a little bit about it. It's interesting, and this may have changed in the 15 years since. The academies aren't very widely known on the West Coast, or at least I didn't feel it was 15 years ago. And so, I had never, in my three years at the high school at that time, he was the only person who'd gotten in. And so he told me a little bit about it, and I was like, man, this is a neat idea. Uh, you get to get a bachelor's degree, you get to serve in the army, and then this idea of officership, I had no idea what it meant to be an officer. Like I didn't know there was, and I was like, oh, neat, let's give it a shot. And so then, I started exploring more and more, and I think at the time, this idea of having a disciplined, structured routine in college was also appealing to me. I couldn't tell you why, but it was appealing to me, and so all those things came together, and I applied and got in.
How did your parents feel about you making this decision?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, extremely supportive. You know, um, Actually, I applied to two primary schools that I applied to is UC Berkeley in California, and here West Point, and I got into both. So two very different tracks, but they were very supportive in both. I joke that I joined the military because my mom didn't let me play with BB guns, but as any mother would be, she was concerned. Uh, but I don't think she ever let that show, or she ever let that impact my pursuit of my dreams. So I was grateful for that.
And you weren't the first in your family to have served. I read somewhere that your great grandfather also served in World War One.
Yeah, absolutely. So my great grandfather served under the British Indian Army, and actually landed in Kuwait, and then fought his way up through Iraq, and was injured in modern day Tikrit, and then subsequently went back. Interestingly enough, ended up fighting in an insurgency against the British when he went back for independence. And so that's always been a source of inspiration for me.
So I remember watching an interview where you talked about showing up to West Point for our day. And you specifically talk about how you're standing in line, you're waiting to get your hair cut. And by the time that you sit down, it was shock for everyone there, yourself, the barbers. And you specifically said, I remember one of the hardest things to do was to look in the mirror the next day and kind of have that self image of yourself shattered completely of what a good Sikh is supposed to be. Can you share what was going on through your mind at the time?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna rewind a little bit and say that when I initially found out that keeping my articles of faith, my beard, I had a pretty gnarly beard in high school at the time, and my turban, and serve was a surprise to me, right? Because Sikhs have been serving in the militaries across the world, and still do, and so that was a surprise. Um, and subsequently, when I think the naive 18-year-old in me, 17-year-old, I was trying to find out. Like I was trying to think, hey, I'll convince, I'll convince DoD, I'll convince the army, and so I was, even to that day, to when me sitting in the barbershop, I was still, or actually outside of the barbershop, I was still trying to convince myself, hey, I'm gonna figure out a way to make this work. And I think for me, and I've mentioned this before, significant influence on my decision to eventually, cut my hair and attend and start the academy was my father, who he never said it to me, he never mentioned it, but I remember him telling me that it's a lot easier to change the system from within. Um, he was involved in some of the turbulent times for Sikhs in Punjab in the 80s with the Indian government, and so he's like yeah, uh, he's like, I wish I was in the system in the Indian government so I could influence it. He's like, I try to influence it from outside, and he's like, I don't think I made a significant change. So that lesson from him, or that piece of advice, was what I was thinking when I was standing outside the barbershop, and uh, still hoping that I was gonna figure something out. And I didn't, and I sat down, um, and it was. I've had an image up to that point. I had an image of what a good Sikh is. Sikhs are known to fight for their principles, fight for their values to the bitter end. And so this idea that I am not fighting to the bitter end for my values, my principles, and I am compromising to at the time so readily, was fairly traumatic to my psyche. Um, and so I remember, to her credit, the barber, she was very respectful, and I remember her taking my hair and putting it in a bag, and giving it to me, and so that was um, that was something. I don't think anyone in that shop, or at the time, knew what I was going through, what was going through my mind, but I think they were supportive the best they could. Uh, and quite honestly, I think it was the rigor of Beast, right? It was the day-to-day rigor that probably got me through it, because, as you mentioned, it was even hard to look in the mirror for the next couple of days. We'd have to get up in the morning. You'd shave in the morning, and I wanted to try to shave without a mirror, because again, I had betrayed my values and my ideals, right? Um, and again, I think it was only the rigors of day to day grind that got me through it.
When this happened, were your parents aware of this?
That's a good question. They knew that this was a possibility. I don't know if when I left home, I told them I was gonna try to figure out a way not to have to cut my hair. I don't know if they believed me, like in terms of that he's gonna succeed or not. Uh, they were supportive, right? They're like, we wish you well, uh, but um, I I think they knew that it was a strong possibility. I actually uh, didn't even talk about it, mention it at all. Like, I would call home, and then they didn't bring up the topic, and I didn't bring it up. Uh, Actually, I don't think I ever brought it up until I went back home for winter break. Uh, and so again, they never asked, I never said anything. But when I went home for winter break, is the first time that they saw me without a beard and turban, and I addressed the issue, and I, get- to their credit, still very supportive, still very understanding of what I had to do, and so I'm grateful for that.
So during the first 6 months, where it's your freshman year,
Yeah,
it's your first semester,
yeah.
you're 18 years old, and did I'm thinking, how are you coping with this?
Yeah.
And then who was there to kind of support you? Because I'm sure you also have a lot of questions.
Yeah. Honestly, I can tell you that, and this is gonna Beast and first semester of West Point were not as difficult, because I already had made the hardest choice. I had already made the most difficult choice that I can make. The rest was just, whatever. You just get through it. And so, and I think that was my journey through the entire academy, and subsequently, early on my career were like, hey, you've already paid you've already paid the highest price. Everything else is just easy. And so I don't think I relied on anyone particular. It was just me internally. I did find myself, reading a first semester, I remember, or really probably first 2 years. I remember, reading more Sikh history, trying to get myself more attached to my faith, uh, just so that I now that I had lost my outward identity, I didn't want to lose my inner identity. So I remember trying a little bit. And actually, I didn't know that there was a Sikh temple here. I wish I'd known. Only 20 minutes away. And so I found out my first year, and that's when I went there my first year. But, yeah.
And to clarify, at the time, there were no other Sikhs that were also going through West Point with you.
No, there were not. There was a. I'm trying to remember if this was my cow year or my first year. There was an instructor here actually. At the time, Major Puriwal, now Colonel Puriwal. He, I want to say maybe it was my first year. He was an instructor in Soch, and so he was a Sikh that he'd gone and graduated from the academy. I want to say in 2001 or 2002, or maybe three, and so he invited me to his office, and we sat down and we talked. So that was kind of neat. That was neat. But no, there weren't any other Sikhs. Actually, there was a guy by the name of Gariwal. He came, I want to say, my Kaur first year also. But initially, my first 2 years, I don't think there were any Sikhs here.
And were either one of them, were they also wearing their articles of faith at the time?
No, they were not, and I don't think they had worn them growing up either, to the best of my knowledge. But still, it was nice to connect with them. The other thing I think, as far as my connections at the academy, I was on the judo team, and so that small group of folks, that's where I primarily, that's who I considered folks that I was close to at the academy.
And on the judo team, I know that you traveled quite a bit. Like you went to Japan.
Yeah. Man, that having that opportunity, extremely grateful. At the time, the coach was Major Ring. Now I believe he's Colonel Ring. I believe. We traveled to Japan, and we traveled to all over the U.S. I think went to Puerto Rico, and so extremely grateful for those opportunities that I had.
Did you also go to India as well?
Yeah. My, I want to say it was my plebe year. I remember this distinctly because the day prior I had done the GPB Ruck March, and the only time ever in my life I've gotten blisters on my feet. I've done much longer ruck marches, but I was brand new. I had brand new boots. Didn't break them in, and learned that lesson. The next day, the Indian Army Chief of Staff came, and for some reason, that guy's an Indian or of Indian background. At the time, General Caslin was the commandant, and so we had brunch, and then he had set up an academy exchange program, and so I had the opportunity. Myself and another guy, Mark, we had the opportunity to go. We were supposed to go to the Indian Academy. For whatever reason, I couldn't tell you why. We got there, and the defense attaché is like, yeah, they've canceled your, they can't host you anymore. But you're already here. Your trip's paid for. So go ahead and do some cultural exploration.
Wow.
So, I spoke the language, Mark didn't. So Mark and I traveled mainly in northern India, doing some cultural immersion.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And that's as a plebe.
No, this was...
or later on as a cow, or...
I want to say is a cow or first, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
What a great experience
that is. Yeah, absolutely. I actually ended up... just doing a quick stop by and saying hello to my family in Punjab. And so that was neat. Mark, I remember Mark saying, he's like, I would have never gotten to see a village in Punjab if you weren't with me. So I think it was a day or two we stayed in my family's house there.
So was it what an enlightening experience for Mark, but also be able to reconnect with
Yep,
your family?
absolutely, my extended family, absolutely.
Overall, how was your cadet experience?
I had a different opinion as a cadet.
We all do.
But yeah. But I think reflecting back, overall, it was a positive experience. I very much appreciate the opportunities that I was given and the experiences that I had. I don't think I would have had those opportunities or experiences in any other college.
So you ended up branching engineers.
Yep.
And you posted at Fort Lewis. Was that to be closer to home?
Yeah. You guessed it, man. So at the time, I could have selected Hawaii or Germany. And in hindsight, maybe, I don't know. But I wanted to be closer to home, and so posted there, and grateful for that, because I not only was I able to reconnect with my brother and my parents, I had some incredible opportunities, both in and outside the Army, while at Fort Lewis.
So 2ID.
Yep.
How did Ranger School come up? Because you're an engineer.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I was in 2ID, Second Striker Brigade, and I'm brand new second lieutenant in the brigade engineer shop, waiting to take a platoon. And the actual brigade engineer at the time rotated in, at the time, Captain Haynes, and he was Ranger qualified. And I was sitting around. I was like, "Hey, send me to school. I want to be productive. I'm doing these little projects." Actually, I'll never forget my first project. At the time, Colonel Barry Huggins, the brigade commander, wanted to figure out a way to reduce geese droppings in the where we did PT. And so, hey, get an engineer on it. Brand new second lieutenant. But I wanted to try to do sapper school. And so Captain Haynes at the time was like, "Why not just go to Ranger School?" And it's like, "Sure, send me." Right. And so I trained out for it, had the opportunity, and ended up going.
So how was that experience?
And you'll hear this over and over again. You learn a lot about yourself, right? More than anything else, you learn how hard you can push your mind and body. Some of the stuff there is fairly basic, right, in terms of what you're doing, but the conditions under which you're doing it is what really matters.
So you successfully completed Ranger School, got your tab.
Yep.
Did you also go to SFAS as well?
I did. So then, deployed, had the opportunity to deploy with a platoon doing rock clearance in Afghanistan. Ended up working closely with some SF teams, clearing for them, clearing routes or helping them in Kandahar province, and was kind of inspired by their mission set. It was inspired by the freedom that they had to make decisions in battle space, and thought, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to have the freedom to be creative, to find creative solutions to problems. And so came back and then put my packet in, and was given a date, and ended up actually going about a year after. Went through, didn't get selected. They said, come back 6 months later. And at the time, I think my timeline was already, I felt like I was already behind on my timeline. So I didn't want to wait another 6 months to try to go back.
Okay. So just to rewind, just backtrack just a little bit. Was it 2012 that you deployed to Kandahar?
Yep.
And you said you specifically took on like a route clearance mission.
Yep.
And clearing IEDs.
Yep.
As a platoon leader.
Yep.
And yet, by the end of that tour, you also received a Bronze Star.
Yep.
So how was your mission set like? What was the deployment like overall?
Yeah. So we were, we were in Kandahar province, doing rock clearance, doing daily missions, and it was a combination of routine routes that we needed to make sure they were clear, for both locals and for U.S. and NATO forces. And then we had unique missions, right? Special missions every now and then where someone had requested our assistance on a route that was not as well traveled. Maybe we were the first ground elements to go on it in months or years, and so we would get those. I would say every 2-3 weeks, interspersed with the routine mission sets. Um, and some of the unique ones were, hey, we're trying to build a clinic in this place. We need some rock clearance assistance getting supplies up there. Hey, an SF compound is closing down. They need to exfil some of the equipment via road, and so hey, can you assist with that? So those kind of missions. Um, you know, I, I did have a tragedy in my platoon. Sergeant McNabb, lost him early in the deployment. An absolutely devastating experience, I think, for me, and I think for the platoon. And finding how to build in that confidence and finding your way back after a tragedy like that. I know I certainly learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the kind of leadership of what it takes to build that confidence as a unit after a devastating loss like that. And then subsequently, how do you balance? Because we still had a couple months of deployment left. How do you balance knowing as a leader, knowing that, and then and the risk associated with it, and accomplishing your mission, right? And so striking that balance, because God forbid you don't want the same thing to happen again, and that constantly weighs on your mind. Um, and so then subsequently coming back and looking Sergeant McNabb's parents in their eyes and face, and telling them that you more or less you kind of failed as a leader to bring their son back. And so that I think that was a moment of growth for me early on, an unfortunate moment of growth, but it is what it is. I think that's part of our job, part of who we are as professionals.
So fast forward, after deployment, after SFAS, you PCS to Fort Belvoir.
Yep.
And you serve as an assistant operations officer, and then eventually take command at 249th Engineer Battalion. What was that experience like?
Yeah. I'll the other part of this. I don't know if you're gonna follow up with it, but I started actually my process for the requesting religious accommodation while at the career course.
Okay.
Not a lot of folks know this, but it was towards the end of the career course that I started. I was in talks with Sikh Coalition, the Sikh Civil Rights Organization. Actually, reached out to my future battalion commander, Colonel Bolton, an incredible leader, and I remember being concerned, right? Like here you are going into a new unit, and you're gonna throw this on the lap of your new battalion commander. Man, she was nothing but supportive from the first phone call that I made to her. And I'll pause here to say that I have been very fortunate in my Army experience to have worked for incredible leaders that have cared about people a lot. And you hear the other side of it a lot. I'll say this, right? Like for my time in Second Stryker Brigade until 249th, very, very privileged to work for some incredible people who care about soldiers. So she was fully on board, fully supportive. And so we had some interesting legal challenges or issues, but it was about 2 months after I finished my career course that I reported to 249th. And again, didn't know that organization existed until I was at the career course. Got an opportunity side. I was a double E major. I was like, oh, this makes sense. The power generation unit, very unique mission set. Not only Oconus, but also helping folks stateside, partnering with FEMA to do disaster relief missions, supplying power with generators. So incredible opportunity and something that very different from the regular Army. But and then also subsequently got to see the Corps of Engineers, which for an engineer officer. Early in your career can be unique, right? The perspective that I saw as far as Corps of Engineers, the headquarters in DC, got to interact with and see what they do. So
I want to go back to when you said towards the end of Triple C, Captain's Career Course, was when you start to begin the process. But what initiated that? I did read that you did attend a Vaisakhi celebration.
Yeah, man, you've done your homework.
At the Pentagon in 2015, where you met with a few other observing Sikhs.
Yeah.
So was that the catalyst, or was there something prior to that?
I would say throughout West Point and early in my career, it was always in the back of my mind that I wanted to serve with my articles of faith. Like that was always. I never stopped yearning for that. Quite honestly, I had resolved that it's going to be decades before something like this happens, right? I was like, I'll probably be close to getting out of the Army by the time something like a change like this happens. And I don't know how they got my email address or who gave it to them, but I was invited to this event, which Vaisakhi is basically one of the main, actually the main holiday for in Sikh faith. Foundation of basically the Orthodox component of Sikh faith, like the Khalsa, and so I was invited in 2015. Went to the Pentagon and met the Sikh Coalition, the Sikh Civil Rights Organization. Met some folks from there. I expressed interest. And they were like, we think this is doable. It's going to be challenging in that, the folks that have been previously, they were on the medical side, and they were, actually, I want to say one of them was active, right? But hey, this is going to be challenging. This is new. Let's see how this works out. And so that's when I started working with them. And this was summer of 2015. And it was late 2015 when I first made the call to my battalion commander as I was getting done with my captain's career course.
So at the time, the Articles of Faith for certain individuals was case-by-case basis.
Yeah, it was a case-by-case basis, yep.
And it wasn't uniform for the entire military at the time.
Yep.
So up until 2006, when you first entered West Point, you had practiced and maintained your Articles of Faith.
Yep.
But for the next decade, 10 years, you were forced to remove your turban, shave and cut your hair, and to abide by the U.S. Army uniform regulations. So in an alternate reality, did you ever consider where you'd only do your 5 years of service and then transition and be able to wear your Articles of Faith? Did that ever cross your mind within your military career? And then at what point did you decide that, you know what, I'm going to try to push for it and combine my two worlds?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was a part of me, again, exactly the way you said it, right? I felt like I was living in two different worlds, especially being at home at Fort Lewis. And so, there were times when I was like, the easier route, right? The easier route would be, I leave at the 5 year mark, and start keeping my articles of faith again. Uh, mm, and I think it was probably the fact that I was building more and more confidence, and enjoying uh, my career as an army officer, as a young engineer officer. I think that is what kind of pushed me to say, no, I enjoy being an army officer. I enjoy being an army engineer officer, and I want to serve. I want to keep serving. There's got to be a different path. There's got to be a different route for this. Um, and again, when I found out, when I connected with those folks, I was like, let's do this.
During that process, for the lawsuit, did you fear any form of like retaliation, professionally or personally?
I'll tell you, man, extremely grateful for my chain of command, and how supportive they were. From a battalion all the way to the Corps of Engineers, at the time, General Bostic. From everything that I heard, right? Like, I don't, that he was supportive. Everyone, and so. However, at the Army level, at the DoD level, there was a concern that, hey, what if this doesn't go through? What if my request does not go through? What if, uh, at the DoD level, folks push back hard, and we're not able to make the change that we want? What does that mean for my career, right? What does that mean for? Um, I knew one thing, right? I showed up in my new battalion in 249th with my beard and turban, and uh, I knew that was not, there was no going back. Like, I was not going to uh, compromise again on my articles of faith. I was not going to, there folks. Before I entered West Point, I was told that, it can have, me having a beard and turban can have a negative impact on the unit morale, and that I wouldn't, be able to seal my gas mask, right? Those kind of things. And so when I just, again, when I showed up to 249th with my beard and turban, I knew there was no going back. Either we succeeded in changing the policy, or, I'll suffer the consequences, whatever the Army has to do.
So, after many years, on January 2017, I believe, you won the federal lawsuit and the right to wear your articles of faith. How did you feel when you heard that news break out and you're able to see yourself and in uniform, and it's not temporary? It's not a temporary
Yeah,
accommodation.
yeah. Um, Man, I'll correct a little bit there. I initially received a temporary one, end of 2015,
Mhm.
and then, the my permanent one actually came. The lawsuit and everything that came in, I want to say, April of 2016, and then subsequently the full Army policy change happened in January 2017. But when I received mine in April of 2016. It was I was like, wow, this actually happened. you know uh Subsequent, before that, I'd been given, like a month or 2 month, temporary accommodations. And so when they gave me a permanent one, this is incredible. I didn't have to fear, I didn't have to worry, I didn't have to, go month to month. I could fully concentrate on my job as a 249th AS3 at the time, and I didn't have to focus on this other stuff. Um, and again, I'll say this: many credits to folks in the three shop at the time, in the 249th, who were supportive of me while I was, my 100% in those 2-3 months was not in my primary job. And so, extremely grateful for them giving me that space to fight this battle.
Were you aware of how big of an impact this shaped not only the U.S. Army but all the branches in the military?
Um, I knew, I had an idea of the impact that it could have. The actual policy change in January 2017, that was incredible. But I knew that, hey, me getting this initial accommodation would have some sort of an impact. Um, the fact that it would lead to the Army changing its policy, the Air Force, and then now Navy and Marine Corps considering it, DoD considering it at the DoD level, and it happening within 2-3 years. I think is I wouldn't have anticipated it. So it's incredible.
So last year, Second Lieutenant Anmol Narang became the first observant Sikh and first Sikh woman to graduate from West Point. This year, first sees Cadet Arjan Gatra and Cadet Gurjiwan Chahal will also graduate.
Yep.
One being actually prior service,
Yep.
right? During this process.
Yep.
And what emotions come to mind when you reflect on this milestone and achievement for these exceptional individuals as well as the Sikh community?
Yeah. Man, I can honestly say that I was more elated, more excited, more proud when I actually ended up working with Arjun and Gurjeevan prior to them starting West Point in 2017. And so the day that I was able to come down here and drop them off with their families to start, I think that's when it really hit me, the profound impact of what had happened. Here, 11 years later, 11 years from the time that I had been in their position, in their shoes, they do not have to make that difficult choice. They can fully concentrate on being the best cadets, being the best Army officers, and being an asset to our nation, rather than deal with this other thing. And so, to me, that was an incredible moment. And then now, Anmol last year, and she's doing amazing things right now in the Army, and will continue to. And Arjun and Gurjeevan, they'll graduate and continue to be just any other Army officers, right? Like that is it. That's the dream. That's the hope, that they are able to. They are given the same opportunities, and they're able to excel and do well as any other Army officers. They're both going to be infantry officers, and I think will do amazing things for our Army.
So just have a few questions left for you. Who are your inspirations?
It's a good one. I want to. My parents, I think, first and foremost comes to my mind. They came here with nothing and did their best to raise my brother and I, and so what they had to go through, what they struggled through, is nothing compared to what I'm going through, and so they are absolutely an inspiration for me. I think professionally, I've had the opportunity to meet many great leaders along the route, and so I don't. As anything, you should pull the good, the good lessons from leaders that you like, and try to stay in touch with them. And so I've had the opportunity to connect with some of them and stay in touch with them. So,
what's next for you?
So I am here for another year. So I finished my first year at West Point. I'm here for another year, and then going to ILE at Leavenworth, and then hopefully go be a S3 or an XO at an engineer battalion.
And this last question I ask everyone on the show is, what is your definition of success, and do you feel like you've achieved it yet?
Yeah. I think my definition of success is leaving something better than you found it. Whatever it is, whether it's an organization, whether it's an individual that you're, and I am, extremely happy with the change that we've been able to make for Sikhs and for really all faiths, individuals of all faiths, so they can wear their articles of faith in the army. There's more left to be done, especially with the Navy and the Marine Corps. But I think it'll get done. So I'm proud of what I've been able to be part of so far.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show, Simmer. Really do appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity. This is incredible. Thank you.